HQ hotshot demands people work on the clock. And they do. Our working time in the company ends at 4 p.m. I've worked here for 4 years, and since my first day, it was normal that people clock out at 4 o'clock. Guys on the production floor usually shut down their machines around 3:30, clean the station and go to shower and change into normal clothes to be ready to clock out at 4. Recently we got a new factory manager from an HQ. Damn, he flipped when he found out people stopped working 30 minutes early to clean their stations and change clothes. He called a big meeting and told us, middle guys, to tell people that 4 p.m. is not the time to leave but to stop working. Thinking he was being smart, he overlooked the rule that employees clock out only when leaving the building, company rule for safety reasons. Basically, it means that the only unpaid thing in our work is smoking, because smoking is allowed only outside of the compound. Past 3 weeks people were turning off machines at 4 p.m. and taking their sweet time to clean the workplace and hit showers, usually making 40 to 60 minutes of overtime per day. Today the new manager found out that over 100 people will have 20 hours overtime and got to dish out nearly $40,000 extra on salaries, while there is not enough production work to cover it because all the machine cleaning and showering was done past regular clocks and cannot be counted towards production, but as utility hours, which employees were generous enough before to fit them into regular hours thanks to filling daily goals a bit early. The new HQ hotshot is now running around the compound trying to find how to justify why suddenly, under his command, the company needs an extra 2,000 man-hours when for over 10 years they never did. When companies start tracking your productivity, beat the system. My company decided to implement third-party software to track employee productivity, and they started this BS way before the pandemic and remote work. All technology teams were being monitored, and I worked on a product team under technology. The main metric they used was how much new code was being written, which is silly because even programmers don't write new code very often. Updated code didn't count, and those were most of the tickets I managed, and meanwhile, I was always fixing other people's code and I was the go-to person for any escalations and releases. When this first started, I saw a dozen emails about writing more code and I thought it was a joke until I got an unscheduled meeting with the department head. He scolded me for having written zero code that month, and despite pushing that my role doesn't exactly require me to write new code, he said, "Sorry, this is the new world." Exact words, lol. Fine, I found some old code libraries that no one used anymore but were still active. Every month, I would copy the libraries, delete them, and then replace them. I tested it out and that counted as new code. Before all this, I was a top performer up for promotion, but my reviews from before didn't count anymore, and all that mattered were these metrics. I tried to keep my shenanigans under the radar, but one month, I did the delete and replace move twice because I forgot if I did my monthly coding quota, and did it again just in case. Well, that quarter I won an award for most prolific engineer, and it came with $2,000. That got the attention of my manager, who was luckily a cool guy and openly complained about how stupid the productivity tracking software was. He knew I wasn't writing code, and neither was he, so I finally told him my secret. He actually thought it was hilarious, and he himself had been just deleting/replacing lines of code to bypass the quota, but he didn't think about doing entire libraries. I knew I wouldn't get in trouble with him, and he even nominated me for a recognition award, which came with another $1,000 in gift cards. I did eventually get promoted, over 6 months later than initially discussed, but things got even worse with the company monitoring productivity during the pandemic. It was so bad to the point where they were logging how many times you were away from your computer for more than 5 minutes. People actually got fired for taking too many breaks between 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Let's just say I was taking my laptop everywhere out of paranoia. It didn't increase productivity, but it for sure killed morale. Thankfully, I got the hell out of there. The rest of my team was not so lucky, but I still get texts from my old manager and team about how they're using my shenanigans. Ultimately, I got a nice $3,000 in awards, $15,000 from the promotion, and a lifetime of drinks from my team for beating the system. Angry director gets her comeuppance, in 4 gradual actions. Several years ago, I used to work at an agency that hired us out as short-term temporary workers/contractors. These jobs pretty much consisted of stuff that company employees couldn't be bothered to do, and so got someone in to sort out. It wasn't great, but I had to make ends meet. Anyway, one of these jobs was for 150 hours at 5 weeks of office administration. There wasn't much more information to go on, but a job's a job. The office turned out to be quite a small, stuffy little building at the back of an industrial estate. I was told to report to Beryl. When I turned up, I was met by a rather grumpy-looking old lady having a cigarette by the front door. This was Beryl. Beryl didn't even say hello or ask me my name, but showed me in, pointed at an enormous pile of boxes full of paperwork, saying this all needs to be scanned in. There are 2 scanners connected to a computer there, off you go. Let someone know if you need help. The office was predominantly young men, with Beryl being the only other woman. She was in her 50s and spent more time smoking than working, and without being rude, clearly didn't look after herself. It was quite flattering to have a bunch of these guys pop by my workstation for a chat occasionally. After a few days of scanning, Beryl visited my cubicle. She wasn't happy that I spent too much time talking and not enough time working. I was confused. While I didn't have any metrics or targets, I was pretty consistently working through this mountain of paperwork. I got the impression that Beryl didn't like the attention I was getting. I pointed out to her that I haven't left my desk apart from to go to the toilet. If someone's over here to talk to me, then that's fine, as I can talk and scan at the same time, like I'm doing right now. She wasn't happy and turned away, calling out, "Just do your job," as she left. Some of the other guys had heard this and they popped by my desk later, and said not to worry. They'd had agency staff before, and Beryl always hated it if a young woman arrived, because she was grumpy and jealous. Not my words. In fact, a few years ago one young woman had left the office in tears because Beryl had tore her a new one for going for lunch with some of the other guys. Naturally this annoyed me, particularly because Beryl thought she could bully/disrespect agency staff, and I certainly wasn't going to leave the job because of an angry bitch. Malicious compliance number 1. For the rest of my time there, I made sure to get dressed up. Makeup, curls, a midi office dress, stiletto heels. When Beryl saw me clicking my way down the office the next day, fully dressed up just to scan some paperwork, she scowled at me but didn't say anything. The next week, Beryl took some time out of her busy smoking schedule to visit me in my cubicle, the second time she'd done so since I'd started. Some of the paperwork I was scanning in had been stapled together, so I'd asked someone in the office for a staple remover and a stapler. I used to pull out the staple, scan the document, rename it on the computer, then re-staple it and put it back in the box. I was just pulling a staple out when Beryl walked by. Beryl's first words to me were, "What are you doing?" I replied that this document was stapled, and if I put it in the machine it'd jam. She raised her voice slightly and said, "Nobody told you to do that, just scan each page in separately. Leave the papers alone." I could almost hear her eye roll as she walked away. Malicious compliance number 2. So I did. Scanned everything with staples just folded over, and then created folders called Document 123, and each scan went in as 123, page 1.pdf, 123, page 2.pdf, you get the idea. This slowed me down a lot, but hey, it's what I was asked to do. At some point Beryl walked by and saw me flipping pages like that. I'd put my hair in a bun and taken my heels off, and she smirked. She thought she'd flustered me and that I didn't see her reaction. "Don't worry, Beryl, you didn't, and I did." The paperwork I was scanning in was boxed up as newest first, so as I got to some of the older papers, these had been moved around a couple of times and were slightly scrunched up or folded or similar. A jam scanner wasn't an issue, it had happened a handful of times before, but as I got to the older papers, the jams became more frequent. It was easy to sort though, just open the back door of the scanner, roll the paper out, cancel the job and redo it. At this point I'd gone back to unstapling and restapling because Beryl had given me some space thinking she'd broken me, and I just wanted to get the job done so I could leave. Beryl walked in one day. This would have been my 4th week there. She saw me unjamming the scanner and flipped her top. She yelled, "SML, what are you doing?" At this point all heads in the office turned to where we were. I calmly told her the scanner's jammed, I'm just pulling the paper out so I can rescan it. Shouldn't take more than a few minutes. She continued yelling, "At no point were you instructed to perform IT repairs. We have someone for that. Stop what you are doing and get someone to help you. I asked you this when you started, why can't you follow simple instructions?" It took a lot of patience not to argue back with her, which I thought was what she wanted, but I said, "Okay, fine. Can I speak to the IT guy to sort this out?" I couldn't have choreographed her response better. I then knew that she did want me to argue so she could kick me out, because she hesitated and said, "Well, the IT guy is off for the rest of the week." This was a Thursday. Ahem. Use the other scanner. If you jam it, let me know. And stormed off. Malicious compliance number 3. I knew her diary and knew she was off the next day, Friday. I carried on with the one scanner, making sure it didn't jam that day, and waited until the next morning. Coincidentally, the scanner jammed on the first piece of paper I fed into it. Who'd have thought? Obviously, I rang Beryl. She didn't answer her phone, and as she wasn't in the office, I spent the day sat around without much to do. Whilst talking to the guys in the office, I learned that the company had been bought by a much larger IT firm and they just wanted the rights to the proprietary software that they had developed. It also turned out that the CEO of the small company basically paid himself into retirement and appointed Beryl as the director. Beryl knew that her days were numbered, so she was even more bitter to the staff. The guys working there had been committed various levels of careers within the new IT firm, which they were happy with. As I was told, 120,000 employees. 30 developer roles are easy to find. One director role is not. Anyway, when we returned, on Monday, you could almost see the vein in her neck throbbing. She'd wasted an entire day of whatever her company paid my agency because little old me wasn't trusted to fix a paper jam. I used to get in a little later than the rest of the staff, agency perks woo, but when I got in she'd had the IT champion perform the skilled job of opening a scanner and pulling a piece of paper out. She didn't even look at me when she said scanners are fixed, get on with your job and don't mess around. My last week there coincided with a new contract that the company had been given by their new owners. I assume it was some sort of litmus test. Whilst I don't pretend to understand what it was, the job involved a lot of scanning documents that had been handwritten. Hooray, more boxes. At the same time, a few of the guys who worked there were going on a visit to the new parent company, which were based in the USA. I live in the UK. The IT champion was one of these guys who went. When the boxes were delivered to my cubicle, Beryl popped by and said, "These take priority. All of what I said to you is more important than ever. Do not mess around, otherwise you're out of the door. Am I clear?" "Yes, ma'am." The paperwork delivered was from the USA. Our paper sizes are different. The first piece of paper I fed into the scanner jammed it, a safety lock, because it expected A4 and got US letter instead. I jammed both scanners. Beryl, not being one to turn down a free trip to America, had gone with them. I rang her at 11 a.m. UK time, which was 5 a.m. their time. She picked up, and was not impressed. I felt sorry for the folks adjacent to her hotel room when she screamed down the phone. "You've done what? How? Why?" I tell her about the USA paperwork. "Can you not fix it?" Final malicious compliance. "No, you've told me many times that I can't fix these machines. What's the business continuity plan?" Beryl had no idea what to do. She was clearly flustered. "Can you just do what you can? We need this done." "What would you want me to do?" "Can you fix the scanners because this is really important?" "I'm sorry, you told me I can't do that. I need simple instructions to work with. Just fix it. I'd be happy to show an IT specialist where the scanners are, if you can get them here to fix." Hang up tone. Well, that's that then. I spent the rest of the week chatting to my colleagues, updating my CV, and applying for jobs. Nobody turned up to fix the scanners. When my final week finished I said bye to the guys I'd worked with, wished them luck, and left with none of the critical paperwork scanned in. When Beryl got back from her business trip I learned that she'd spent one day at the parent company and left it to the other guys. When the shit hit the fan because nothing was being delivered, they wondered where she was. This was day 2 into the 5-day business trip. She was at a spa, phone switched off. She flew out early on day 5, without seeing any of her colleagues or the parent company. I kept in touch with a few of the guys afterwards. After this, the dev guys were transferred contracts to the larger IT firm. They all got a very small salary increase but were also able to work from home. This was pre-COVID, so it was a bit of a rarity back then. Beryl, meanwhile, didn't fare so well. She was initially offered redundancy, paid, including pension deals, but when someone complained that she'd not been present for the meetings, which I think was their IT champion, they found out she'd been sightseeing, shopping, tanning and getting her hair done on company time. She ended up being fired. No bonus, no pension, nothing. I quit the agency not long afterwards and after 1 or 2 moves, ended up in a job I'm very happy with. The agency were none the wiser about any of this, they just wanted their money and aside from one initial checkup call, left me to it.